Hello everybody and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review we're going to be delving into the world of Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor, as I'm going to be taking a look at the 4th Doctor Adventures Series 11 Part 1 entitled Solo, which does of course feature two 2-hour stories of 4 parts long in length each, the first of which is Blood of the Timelords by Timothy X. A. Tack, and the second episode is The Witch of Ravencliffe as written by David Llewellyn, and that episode does of course see the debut of Margaret Hopwood, the 4th Doctor's companion, who will be receiving a few more stories, I do believe, in the next few years. The 4th Doctor Adventures, as always, is available in a number of different formats. You can get both of these stories in a box set on the Big Finish website, but you can also download the stories separately. I do believe they're around £12 each, although they're not available in physical CD separately. So if there is a particular story throughout this box set that you would like to purchase separately from the other one, then you can definitely do that throughout this set via the Big Finish website. So I am very excited to be taking a look at more 4th Doctor adventures. I do feel like it has been quite a while, and I do love a good 4th Doctor story, because I think even on screen, the 4th Doctor is simply so comforting to watch. I feel like he's a Doctor who is very easy to get along with, and of course Tom Baker is incredibly iconic indeed. It's always nice being able to return to eras I don't tend to listen to on a regular basis with Big Finish, and I think that the 4th Doctor range is a good example of that, as for me, it always feels like so long between the releases. Blood of the Timelords intrigued me, as Series 11 sees the 4th Doctor travelling by himself, with a box set entitled Solo, but he almost certainly is going to acquire some friends along the way. I do like when Doctors travel alone, as it gives more time to explore that incarnation's personality, as well as see some more different ways to tell the story, not having a companion to ask the obvious questions on behalf of the audience, or to simply get trapped in dangerous situations. Part 1 presents this excellently, with the 4th Doctor basically talking to himself continuously. He carries the scene whilst giving the rare chance to experience the 4th Doctor's thought process. A similar technique is also used within the following story, and that sense of Tom Baker is that even though he's talking to himself, he still feels like he's almost talking to the audience as well. Blood of the Timelords flew by, in my opinion. The combination of narrative and characters absolutely flourish, providing a fun, exciting and spooky follow-up to The Deadly Assassin, although the episode itself is quite similar in concept. The Doctor lands on one of Gallifrey's moons in the hope to find out more about a book that he's found within the TARDIS miscellaneous room. From this point onwards, we go on a grand adventure, digging into the shadows of old Gallifreyan society. What I love about Timothy X. A. Tack's way of writing is that we hear about the past, providing answers whilst also creating even more questions. It adds to the mystery within this ancient civilization. Tom Baker is absolutely on top form. He's excellently written and his presence is certainly felt throughout each line. He has some great one-liners and each character interaction really draws on the cast's strengths, especially when the Doctor is believed to have killed 2 Time Lords within the library, much like how the Doctor is framed for the killing of the President in The Deadly Assassin. Eleonora is one of the companion-style characters for the story, and she is a Time Lord who organises the books within the never-ending library. I love the way that Emma Noakes plays the character. She's lots of fun, intelligent, and has a thirst for adventure, whilst also remaining close to her comforts. The dynamic she has with the Doctor is lots of fun, and I wouldn't mind seeing her return for more adventures in the future. The entirety of this story is rich with plot and personality. Each part builds on the previous one, and it kept me hooked, wanting to listen to the entire story within one sitting. I'm actually needing to edit out parts of this review, as I simply want to reveal and talk about more of the story and the concept as a whole. The cohorts, who are the sinister hooded looking characters on the front cover, are really spooky, and I could visualise them floating around the library and its various corridors. Lorik and Sedania, who are played by Christopher Naylor and Annette Badland, are superb additions to this plot. I really wish that we'd seen more of them throughout the story, and you could have easily made them the main foes of the episode. Much like The Deadly Assassin, I like how this adventure surrounds the Doctor with fellow Time Lords rather than humans. The Doctor is in the company of his intelligent peers, or even his superiors. The highlight of this story for me is hearing the Time Lords come to terms with the concept of death. The library is where the Time Lords go nearing the end of their life, having lived for so very long. I think that this is in fact quite a daring plot point for a race which is seemingly eternal. The Master is also within this story with another one of his grand plans, but this plan dates back in both his and the Doctor's timelines. It feels quite different hearing the Fourth Doctor play off another incarnation of the Master, who isn't Geoffrey Beevers. I do like how the plot actually involves the canon context. This is an earlier version of the Master, so from a very long time ago in comparison to the Doctor's timeline. This allows for the episode to explore a bit of the Doctor's past, his time at the Academy, and the relationship between himself and the Master. Overall, for Blood of the Time Lords by Timothy X. Attack, this story is like a space onion. Shrouded in books and spooky mists of time, I was hooked from part 1 and enjoyed it all the way through to the end. Comparison has been drawn with this episode to The Deadly Assassin, sharing very similar plot components, and if you are really protective of that story, then perhaps don't listen to this one. But I still think that Blood of the Time Lords has some unique elements, from Eleonora, the never-ending library, the excellent Lorik and Sedania, which makes it worthwhile in my eyes. I mentioned space onions because this story does very much feel like a narrative with so many layers yet to be uncovered. I think that Blood of the Time Lords has that rather unusual situation where its massive positive is also one of its negatives, because this episode has so much going on. It's got so many exciting different components where you could essentially make this story go down so many different avenues, and that can kind of also work as the story's negative, because it means there's so many different ideas to go down where you do want it to venture down those certain avenues, and yet it doesn't. Instead, we sometimes get a few of those elements coming in that ideally you might have wished to not see much of. So for example, throughout this story we get to see the Fourth Doctor once again facing off against the Master. You could essentially make this episode a Master-like story, and you could have focused on Lorik and Sedania, who overall were two ancient Time Lords who kind of had their own idea of society, their own little plan, so we could have had them being the main foes of the story, and yet we had the Master coming in. But that in itself meant that because the Master was in the story, we get to have this wonderful kind of journey back in time into the Fourth Doctor's past, well, into the Doctor's past generally, to the time of the Academy, meaning that we get to see kind of the Doctor and the Master venture into that teaching territory, being taught by a tutor, because we get to see some faces from the Doctor's past throughout this episode as well, which is very interesting. It's different, it's unique, and I quite like that. So it's one of those things where it could have gone down so many different routes, but I think in a way Blood of the Time Lords just has so many different kind of plates that it's spinning. I would have personally liked to see it do things that arguably it didn't do, but that's still made for a really exciting story. Personally, I really enjoyed it, even though it did rehash elements that we've seen before. Witch of Ravencliffe, as written by David Llewellyn, is another 4-part adventure which very much evokes the style of the early Fourth Doctor seasons. It's well paced, easy to follow, and the scenery plus characters are so easy to visualise within your mind when listening along. The Doctor lands at Ravencliffe, and it's clear from the off that there's something the TARDIS does not like. The whole serial uses the good old trope of ghosts, history and local mystery to create a story which suggests the presence of a higher power throughout. I love the way that David Llewellyn also uses technology as an overshadowing element that could possibly be influencing the ghostly happenings. To the locals' dislike, a power plant has been built on the coast of Ravencliffe, surrounding the cottage of Margaret Hopwood and the lighthouse ran by Silas in the company of his dog Buster. The power plant uses Novium instead of the usual energy supply, and the Doctor has his reservations. Throughout both of the serials within Solo, Tom Baker really does provide a thoroughly enjoyable performance. He brings so much energy to the role, and I love how he gets involved within the plot. With Tom Baker, I think that you're always going to be taken on an exciting journey. Both of these plots really excel in making that a reality. It might in fact be one of my favourite outings for Tom Baker as the Doctor. It's an excellent performance. Nerys Hughes plays the artistic model maker Margaret Hopwood, a person who's been created for the Doctor Who universe. I don't believe she actually existed within real life. She's a woman who is determined to stay in her home, despite the ugly power station she hates being close by. She's lived in the house for so many years. If you are a follower of Big Finish news, you will know that Margaret is actually going to be a future companion of the Fourth Doctor, so in a sense, this story is her origin story, but we don't actually see her joining the TARDIS just yet. Tom and Nerys work really well together. Margaret is a warm character with some interesting stories to tell. She's caring but also has a spirit of adventure. You see from the get-go with this story, the Doctor comes bounding in, literally having been found in her garden, and then from there Margaret is taken on this bizarre adventure. For example, by the end of part 1, they literally end up in an old knackered boat out to sea, basically with their lives about to be taken away from them. Yet Margaret seems a little bit unfazed. She matches Tom Baker down to a T. I'm really looking forward to hearing more from them in the future, as so far I'm certainly getting 6th Doctor and Evelyn Smythe vibes. Oddly though, we do in fact hear Tom interacting a little bit more with another one of the female characters from the story, being Celia Banks, one of the professional scientists who works at the power plant within the story, as portrayed by Lucy Pickles. She is another great character with a personal connection to the plot, and she really helps make the sciencey stuff easier to follow, and it doesn't really drown out the actual plot of this story. It's still enjoyable, and it kind of makes the episode easier to understand. The witch herself is quite spooky. She appears at times before bad things are going to happen, such as the loss of someone that a person knows, or maybe even moments before the death of that very character. Although the blend of paranormal and technology certainly isn't new, I like the way that this adventure manages to intertwine both of those elements. I don't think that this is a jump scare kind of story, but one which certainly plays with local fears, and this episode certainly parallels the concerns surrounding the use of nuclear energy. At this point, tampering in something that the humans don't exactly know what the result is going to be. There are some very dramatic moments throughout this episode, such as local wildlife turning bad and attacking the characters, which works really well within the audio drama format, and I imagine if it happened on screen, it would have been a bit less effective. The Doctor also speaks dog for a moment throughout this episode, which is a delightfully endearing moment. Being someone who has dogs back at home, it was a really nice, warm, fuzzy feeling, and just brought a moment of happiness to this story, and kind of evokes the Fourth Doctor's wonderful personality. Much like Blood of the Timelords, I think The Witch of Ravencliffe is simply a really enjoyable adventure that kept me invested throughout the entirety of this story's duration. It feels faithful to 70s Doctor Who, with a spark of contemporary and a very high quality production standard. I do like the way that The Witch of Ravencliffe doesn't particularly rely on the witch to kind of drive the story. We do get a few of those moments in there that's like, ooh, I'm haunted, you know, screamy cackles and all of that, but we don't particularly rely on that to tell the story. It's not a fully paranormal story. We do have that paranormal element in there, but ultimately the humans that are in this local proximity of this power station are what really drive this story forward. I love the fact that we have these troubles between the owner of the lighthouse and his daughter, because his daughter has gone to work for the power station and he is deeply against the power station. Then you have Margaret, who's creating her sculptures, and she has this way of life and doesn't want to move because she's been in this area for so long. This is their area of British coastline, and they do not want these people coming in from the city to put a massive power station in the way. So you kind of get those issues that we have in society today, where the government comes along and builds massive things or rips down people's houses and ultimately destroys people's way of life. And I felt intrigued by the characters throughout this story. I felt like we got a glimpse into their local life, and we got that idea of their lives were a part of this much bigger picture, not just on Earth, but also in the entire universe, because we have that whole idea of the witch, and that brings in the extraterrestrial element of the universe, and there being more things at play, which I think was a really intriguing way to take this story. And much like Blood of the Time Lords, each part actually contributed to the narrative. It was very well paced. I wanted to know what happened next. I thought the cliffhangers were very good, very much of the period, and again, Tom Baker was excellent. Some perfect warmth to his character, and I love the way that he interacted with all the different characters throughout the story. We get him going into the power station, pretending to be someone from government to do a little bit of a report, which is quite nice. It fits into the era so very well, and I really, really enjoyed that. So if you're a fan of Tom Baker's TV stories, I think this one will be really satisfying listening. There we have it, that is my review of the 4th Doctor Adventures Series 11, Part 1, entitled Solo. Who knows, I might be able to take a look at Part 2 later this year if I get the time, but I did really enjoy taking a look at these stories. You don't need to have any additional canon context in order to listen to these episodes and fully understand them. So yes, if you're wanting to get a glimpse into Tom Baker's world of Doctor Who, then this is very much a box set for you. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for regular Doctor Who content and Big Finish reviews. And of course on that note, have a nice day. I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.